morning, beloved. Good morning. Welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a member of the lead ministry team here at Beacon, where we are committed to radical inclusion, to feeding the human spirit, and healing the world, and we have just about 59 minutes to do all of that in today's service. We'll get it done. Happy Hanukkah to all of our Beacon family who celebrates Hanukkah, as well as our Jewish siblings the world over. Indeed, we have entered into the season of lights, and despite the strange weather here in Summit, New Jersey, a little balmy, a little rainy, it is a welcome time to bring in the lights as we head deep into winter. I want to share with you just a couple of announcements. One is that we will have some time for coffee after our service upstairs in Bumbaugh Balcony. We hope that you can take some time to connect with one another. Also, please, as you are joining us online, if you'd share your name and where you're joining us from in the chat, we'd love to welcome you. During coffee hour, if you take a moment right out in our foyer, there is a book for Reverend Emily that we are placing blessings in and notes of gratitude. And so if you take a moment and just write a blessing or a note of gratitude in the book, which brings me to my next announcement, we will be giving Reverend Emily that book as well as another gift and some spoken blessings this evening at 4 p.m. right here in our sanctuary for our ritual of release and farewell to Reverend Emily as we wish her well on her continued ministry now into a broader congregation through the good work of Leader Wise. I want to invite you in this season of light. It can also be a season of frenzy. Does anybody else feel like there's a little bit of frenzy in this season? Maybe we just turn down the lights a little. Why don't we take a breath and call ourselves, our whole selves, to this moment, to this time, to one another. Call ourselves to the awareness that those who are gathered here in our sanctuary are gathered on the continued and ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape. Call yourself to the awareness of what your body needs in this moment. It's probably another breath. And then I'd invite you, if you just take a moment and maybe say hello to a neighbor that you're sitting next to. If you're joining us online, say hello on the chat. Let's just have a moment of greeting this morning. Beloved, you came right back on cue. The 11 a.m. service is much more unwilling to come back, so I'll turn it over to our Director of Music Ministry.
Good morning. I am joined today by Melanie Davis and Joelle Botchner, who are going to help us with our hymns and with our song later on, which also will involve Brian Kelly and Ron Califano. But our first hymn of the day is number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. And I invite you to rise in any way possible and join us in singing.
Sound and sight, source of all, to thee we raise. Good morning, Beacon. I'm Missy Rogers, your worship associate today. I am a tallish woman, white woman with salt and pepper hair. And although Pablo and I did not coordinate, we are very sort of red forward today. We light this chalice for the web of life that sustains us, for this sacred circle of life in which we have our being, for the earth, the sky above and below, and for our Mother Earth, and for the mystery.
Good morning, Beacon. I am Pablo Vasquez, the intern minister here. I am an average height, or at least I like to think I am, Afro-Latin, masculine-looking person with long hair and a very flowery shirt and red pants today. So I'd like to read you a story from another tradition I follow in Shintoism. And it fits with the theme of today, which inspired also the title of my sermon later, as this story also inspired Thomas Merton, whose death anniversary is today. The wind in the pine tree. It was a deity from high heaven that planted the pine tree, so long ago that the crane cannot remember it, and the tortoise knows it only by hearsay from his great-grandmother, the heavenly deity descended. Lightly, lightly he came by the way of the floating bridge, bearing the tree in his right hand. Lightly, lightly his feet touched the earth. He said, I have come to the land of the reed plains. I have come to the land of the fresh rice ears. It is a good land. I am satisfied. And he planted the pine tree within the sound of the sea at Takasaga, which is in the province of Harima. Then he went up again to high heaven by way of the floating bridge. But the pine tree flourished. So great it grew. There was not a greater tree in all the land of the reed plains. Its trunk was rosy red, and beneath it spread a brown carpet of fallen needles. In the sweet nights of summer, the children of the woods came hand in hand to the pine tree by moonlight, slipping their slim, dark feet upon the moss and tossing back their long green hair. The children of the water came by moonlight, all drenching wet their sleeves, and the bright drops fell from their fingertips. The children of the air rested in the pine tree's branches and made murmuring music all the livelong night. The children of the sea foam crept up the yellow sands, and from the confines of Yomi came the mysteries, the sounds, and the scents of the dark. With faces veiled and thin gray forms they came, and they hung upon the air about the place where the pine tree was, so that the place was holy and haunted. Lovers wandering upon the beach of Takasaga would hear the great company of spirits singing together. Joy of my heart, they said to one another, do you hear the wind in the pine tree? Poor souls lying sick abed would listen, and fishermen far out at sea would pause in their labor to whisper, the wind in the pine tree, how the sound carries over the water. As for the coming of the maiden, the crane cannot remember it, but the tortoise has it of his great-grandmother that she was born of poor parents in Takasaga. The maiden was brown and tall and slender, in face and form most lovely. Her hair hung down to her knees. She rose at dawn to help her mother. She found sticks for the fire. She drew water at the well. She could spin and weave with the best, and for long, long hours she sat and plied her wheel or her shuttle in the shade of the great pine tree, whilst the ears heard the sound of the wind in its branches. Sometimes her eyes looked out over the paths of the sea, as one who waits and watches. She was calm, not restless, more grave than gay, though she smiled not seldom. Her voice was a voice of a heavenly being. Now concerning the youth from the far province, of him the crane knows something, for the crane is a great traveler. She was flying over the streams and the valleys of the far province, so she says. When she saw the youth at work in the green rice fields, the crane lingered, circling slowly in the bright air. The youth stood up. He looked round upon the valleys and streams, and he looked into the sky. I hear the call, he said. I may tarry no longer. Voice in my heart, I hear and I obey. With that, he left the rice field and bade farewell to his mother and his father and his sisters and his brothers and his friends. All together, they came down to the seashore, weeping and clinging to each other. The youth took a boat and went away to sea, and the rest of them stood upon the beach. On sped the boat for many a day over the unknown paths of the sea, and the white crane flew behind the boat, and when the wind failed, she pushed the boat forward with the wind of her strong wings. At last, one evening about the hour of sunset, the youth heard the sound of sweet singing. The sound came to him from the land, and it traveled over the paths of the sea. He stood up on his boat, and the crane beat her strong white wings and guided his boat to the shore till its keel touched the yellow sand of the sea beach of Takasaga. When the youth had come ashore, he pushed the boat again with the waves and watched it drift away. Then he turned his face inland. The sound of music was still in his ears. The voice was like the voice of a heavenly being, and strange and mystical and mysterious were the words of the song. The lover brought a love gift to his mistress, jewels of jade upon a silken string, well-carved jewels, well-rounded jewels, green as the grass upon a silken string. The jewels know not one another, the string they know, or the strength of the silken string. The youth went inland and came to the great pine tree and to the maid that sat beneath, weaving diligently and singing. The crane came flying with her strong white wings and perched upon the tree's topmost branches. The tortoise lay below the brown carpet of needles. He watched and saw much with his little eyes, but he said nothing, being very silent by nature. The youth stood before the maiden, waiting. Whence come you? She said, lifting up her eyes. I have come across the sea path. I have come from afar. And wherefore came you? That you must know best, seeing it was your voice that sang in my heart. Do you bring me the gift? She said. Indeed, I bring you the complete gift, jewels of jade upon a silken string. Come, she said, and rose and took him by the hand, and they went to her father's house. So they drank the 3 times 3, and were made man and wife, and lived in sweet tranquility many, many years. All the time the crane dwelt in the pine tree's topmost branches, and the tortoise on the brown carpet of needles below. At last the youth and maiden that once were became white-haired, old and withered, by the swift, relentless passage of years. Fair love, said the old man, how weary I grow. It is sad to be old. Say not so, dear delight of my heart, said the old woman. Say not so, for the best of all is to come. My dear, said the old man, I have desired to see the great pine tree before I die, and to listen once more to the song of the wind in its branches. Come then, she said, and rose and took him by the hand. Old and faint and worn, with feeble tottering steps, hand in hand they came. How faint I grow, said the old man. Ah, I am afraid, how dark it is. Hold you my hand. I have it fast in mine. There, lie down, dear love. Be still and listen to the wind in the pine trees. He lay on the soft brown bed beneath the pine tree's boughs, and the wind sang. She who was his love and his wife bent over him and sheltered him, and he suffered the great change. Then he opened his eyes and looked at her. She was tall and straight and slender, in face and form most lovely, and each of them as young as the gods are young. He put out his hand and touched her. Your long black hair, he said. Once more she bade him, come. Lightly they left the ground. To the sound of the wind's music they swayed, they floated, they rose into the air. Higher they rose and higher. The branches of the pine tree received them, and they were no more seen. Still, in the sweet nights of summer, the children of the woods come hand in hand to the pine tree by moonlight, slipping their slim dark feet upon the moss, tossing back their long green hair. The children of the water come by moonlight, all drenching wet their sleeves, and the bright drops fall from their fingertips. The children of the air rest in the pine trees' branches and make murmuring music all the livelong night. The children of the sea foam creep up the yellow sands, and from the confines of Yomi come the mysteries, the sounds, and the scents of the dark. With faces veiled in thin gray forms they come, and they hang upon the air about the place where the pine tree is, so that the place is holy and haunted. Lovers wandering upon the beach at Takasaga hear the great company of spirits singing together. Joy of my heart, they say to one another, do you hear the wind in the pine tree?
Good morning, Beacon. My name is Allison Murphy, she, her. I'm one of the chaplains here at Beacon. And the role of chaplains is to extend the spiritual care of our community. What does that mean? That means that we as chaplains are available for deep listening. For anything that's going on in your life, you can be paired with a chaplain to discuss what's on your heart. One of the rituals of the spiritual care of our community is our candle lighting. Together, we light candles of joy, sorrow, and gratitude. This morning, we light a candle of joy for those uplifted by the holiday season, as well as a candle of support for those who struggle during this time due to grief, estrangement from family, and more. We light a candle for those kindling a fourth light tonight in celebration of Hanukkah. We light a candle of peace during continued violence in conflicts around the world. We light a candle this morning for Vicki Carter, our frequent Beacon accompanist, who's in the hospital. We hope this candle brings for solutions. We light a candle for solutions to emerge for Vicki's recent health issues. We light a candle of gratitude for the gift of Emily and her family as we release her later today, and a hope that she finds fulfillment and happiness as she answers her calling to share the wisdom and love that she has in abundance with religious leaders who she will meet in her new ministry. And I'm going to ad-lib one more candle, Robin, for the rest of us who are dealing with the loss of Emily and the joy and the sorrow and the grief that we feel as we will say goodbye to her later today. For those of you joining us online, we invite you to light a candle at home. And for those of you here with us today, we invite you to come forward to light a candle for what's on your mind and in your heart.
song of the day is also in the hymnal. It's number 396. I know this rose will open. And we're going to do this as a round with the help of Melanie and Joelle. So we'll first sing the whole thing together one time through. And then we're going to do it in a round. And Melanie's side of the room will start with her. So have courage, sing. Then Joelle's side of the room will start in with her. And then we will all meet together at the end. It's 396.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. This rose will I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will I know this rose will I know this rose will I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose 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 will open.
I invite you all to close your eyes or focus them on the many lights before you and join me in meditation. I want you to listen to the air that flows through the vents here. Listen to your own heartbeats. Bring yourself in communion with one another through your ears, through your mind, through your heart. Be still as much as you can and think of when you leave here that you should take some time to listen to the wind in the pine trees and enjoy the beautiful winter that lies ahead of us. No matter how strange it is, with how hot it is out there in comparison to, say, other winters, no matter how we feel right now, whether we're in mourning or joy, that we bring ourselves to just open up our hearts and our ears to listen to that wind. And bring yourselves back into this space, and we will continue the service now. Thank you.
And now for our special offering, which is the final week of 3 that we've been taking an offering for organizations working to alleviate hunger and homelessness. Among them included SHIP, Summit Helping Its People. Chris Cotter is here to speak on behalf of SHIP and share the good news and the good work of SHIP. Chris.
Thank you, Reverend. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Cotter, and I serve as a member of the Board of Directors of SHIP. And while I'm not a member of this church, I am a longtime admirer of the works and the projects that you engage in as a congregation, because your engagement embodies faith in action. And so it's a privilege for me to share a few brief remarks about SHIP. SHIP provides a hot meal and a to-go lunch 5 days each week at Calvary Church on Woodland Avenue. And on weekends, a hot to-go lunch is provided. 10,000 meals each year provided by volunteers and funded by the generosity of donors. That's the what. But SHIP was formed in 1991, 32 years ago, long enough so that it's easy to forget the why. So this is a story of the why, because when you know the why, the what can become even more impactful. In the 1970s and 1980s, if you were to walk along Broad Street near where the Senior Citizen Center is today, you'd see a very different streetscape. If you looked along Chestnut Avenue, there was a 3-story tenement anchored on one side by the Gold Mine Deli, a bodega, and on the other by a beloved pizzeria. To the right on Broad Street were wood frame homes, and across the street a smattering of commercial enterprises, a liquor store, a cycle shop, a cold storage warehouse, followed by more row houses. It was a neighborhood, quirky, but it was a neighborhood nonetheless. But when a desire to remove substandard housing and a desperate need to create affordable housing for senior citizens conspired with a call for a new city hall, that neighborhood's days were numbered. In the space of just a couple of years, it would vanish. But before it was gone, a flat in one of those row houses would be occupied by 2 roommates, Lester Pryor and Charlie Gordon. In his prime, Lester, a giant of a man, had played semi-pro football for the Summit Titans, and Charlie, in his prime, had worked as a member of the city's Department of Public Works. But by now, they were both well past their prime. This is a story about Charlie Gordon, a descendant of Dr. Elliot Gordon, a physician of some renown and a founder of Fair Oaks Hospital. By the 1980s, Charlie was in a losing battle with alcohol addiction. When their apartment was demolished along with the rest of that quirky neighborhood in the late 1980s to make way for a city hall, senior center, and parking lots, Lester and Charlie relocated to a time in the cab of a red pickup truck. Most days it was parked on Railroad Avenue near the train station, until they had a falling out of sorts. And then Charlie became truly homeless. He joined those members of society that are all too often invisible in plain sight, spending most days occupying a bench in the village green. And it was there, on that bench, one morning, after an unseasonably cold night in mid-November of 1990, where he was found dead. He was 45 years old. Charlie Gordon was not the first to be homeless in Summit, and certainly not the last. But his death, where it occurred, and that it occurred in a community often associated with privilege, galvanized a call to action. Janet Whitman, one of Summit's most consequential mayors, appealed to the Interfaith Council of Churches, and SHIP, meant to be a program of action rather than a place, was born. In the ensuing 32 years, more than 450,000 meals have been provided for those in need. 450,000 in this community of privilege. That's a feat accomplished with a battalion of volunteers, organizing food drives and fundraising events, serving as board members, collecting donations of food, and preparing and serving it in a safe, welcoming environment where, just as importantly, those same volunteers serve up large portions of dignity every day. So that's the why behind SHIP, Summit Helping Its People. As an enterprise that relies on volunteers, we're always looking for residents willing to step forward to help, motivated simply by making the community an even better place. They are, in a very real sense, demonstrating faith in action. SHIP coordinates its work with other nonprofit organizations, notably Summit Warm Hearts, Bridges, and Grace, to assure that no one falls through the cracks and our clients are referred to the services they so desperately need. So thank you for this opportunity to share the story of SHIP, and thank you especially for the financial support that you may provide, because tomorrow morning, 15 people or so will arrive at Calvary Church at 6 a.m., where they will receive a hot breakfast, a to-go lunch, served with a large portion of dignity. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Before we begin our offertory and take up our offering, Chris, I want to light a candle for Charlie. And for the many who are unhoused, whose lives are not known by name, and whose death will be memorialized in vigils that take place across the country in the next week and the week following, including one here in Summit. I want to light one more candle. For all of the individuals and families who are facing eviction, who are recently unhoused, who are currently, perhaps chronically, unhoused and underemployed here in Summit, here in Union County, here in New Jersey, here in the United States. With humbleness of heart, our morning offering will now be most gratefully received.
Because the world is round, it turns me on. Because the world is round. Because the wind is high, it blows my mind. Because the sky is high. Love is old, love is new. Love is all, love is you. Because the sky is blue, it makes me cry. sky is blue.
Two things. There we go. Before I begin, I want to say two things. One, I had originally written this sermon with a mind of, since when the last time I was here, a bunch of you told me it was strange that I love the cold so much and I should be wearing a jacket during the winter. And seeing how today is unseasonably warm and as hot as it is in Austin right now, I thought to myself perhaps a different message was needed. I was about to shame you all and tell you you should love the cold as much as me, but we have a different thing to talk about. Two, to continue our mission of radical inclusion, and because we have people here in this very building who have very little knowledge of English, and also because I know there are people watching right now as well that don't particularly speak English, I will be saying my sermon again in Spanish to include them. Everything okay? All right, let us begin. Nothing has ever been said about God that hasn't already been said better by the wind in the pine trees. This striking and beautiful statement comes to us from Thomas Merton, who also loved the winter, by the way. An American Catholic mystic, pacifist, social justice advocate, interfaith pioneer, and scholar of the world's varied religions. Today is the anniversary of his death and his feast day in the Episcopal Church. And he said that his death he would welcome his death because it would finally make him one with creation, with the moss, and with love. He understood that our existence's mysteries are too vast and beautiful to be contained solely within one tradition, and explored far beyond this, enlightening his fellow Catholics and many others to the wisdom found in Buddhism, Shinto, Hinduism, Taoism, and more. He shined particularly as an eco-theologian. Eco-theology is what I will be talking about today, and was noted as a St. Francis type who spoke to the plants, animals, and trees because he believed they all spoke back to him of theological truths no one else could even fathom. To put it in his own words, drink it all in, everything, the redwood forests, the sea, the sky, the waves, the birds, the sea lions. It is in all this that you will find your answers. However, acknowledging that both Brother Merton and I have a propensity towards the poetic that adds mystery on top of mystery for some people, I'll attempt now, probably unsuccessfully, to speak more plainly as to what ecotheology is and why it is absolutely crucial to our continued metaphysical and physical existence. To put it simply, when we ground our spiritual thinking on the reality of what sustains us, on the interconnected web of existence, on the waters, the trees, the air we breathe, that's ecotheology. When we see the nearby Atlantic in the tears of a lover, when the laughter of our friends brings us to the joys of the mountains, when we smile at our family after a delicious holiday meal and are grateful to the land that gave it to us, that's ecotheology. When we cry to the heavens and yell at our politicians about the degradation of our soil, when we join our indigenous brethren to stop the corporate theft of sacred water, when we notice that the summers are getting brutal and the winters are getting hotter, and decide enough is enough, that too is ecotheology. To quote Thomas Merton again in his beautiful poetry, by ceasing to question the sun, I have become light, bird and wind. My leaves sing, I am earth. I am earth. We must thus, as Thomas Merton calls to us, become earth as well. And I have to apologize, as I promised an end to the poetics, but I can't speak of our beautiful Mother Earth, our Gaia, our Kahesena Haki, without being moved to get as close to a language beyond words as I can, what the Sufis have called the language of the birds. However, it is this tongue of mystics familiar to Brother Merton, this hidden hymn of the birds and the trees, that brings me here to call you to theological truth and righteous action. I don't come to castigate anyone, but it would be irresponsible of me to say that we don't all share some element of the blame for where we are today and what we have done to the only home we know, what the humanist mystic Carl Sagan called our pale blue dot, our home. More importantly, we all share a collective responsibility towards a hope that the media never seems to want to tell us, that we can make things right again. We can set our house in order. It is and will be a long and arduous struggle, but putting our ecotheology in action will prove to be one of the greatest achievements in our shared ethical and spiritual history as a young and curious species. This is why I've come here, not to bring worry or fear or even annoyance, but rather to bring hope and love. We must work towards holding the powerful accountable who dump chemicals in our oceans, who smog up our cities, who pollute our skies, who degrade the labor of the farmers and their lands that bring us what we eat, who bring the terrors of war to Levantine olive groves and Slavic wheat fields, who most importantly want to convince us that there's nothing we can do about it. However, we know that to be completely untrue, for we have an active and prophetic spirit that binds us in Unitarian Universalism. Our history is filled with those who not only spoke to us of ponds and trees and the transcendental side of nature, but also those who put their very lives on the line to speak truth to power, to liberate the oppressed, to bring us to right relationship with one another in our wonderful planet. We are the heirs to that important legacy, and thus must unite our spiritual and political visions together into an active, powerful, and loving eco-theology that will transform our hearts, minds, communities, and the world. Recently, an Israeli friend of mine sent me the striking verses pertinent to these times of the Palestinian poet Marwan Makul, who put it so well and stirred me to rewrite this sermon. In order for me to write poetry that isn't political, I must listen to the birds. And in order to hear the birds, the warplanes must be silent. So let's go forward into this beautiful and hopefully colder winter together, eco-theologians that we are, and make sure that we listen to the wind in the pine trees so that all of our brethren in here and out there can also listen to the birds. Thank you, happy holidays, and may we always be one with creation, with the moss, and with love. Nunca se ha dicho algo sobre Dios que no haya sido dicho mejor por el viento en los árboles. Esta sorprendente y hermosa declaración nos llega de Thomas Merton, que también amaba el invierno, un místico católico estadounidense, pacifista, defensor de la justicia social, pionero interreligioso y académico de las diversas religiones del mundo. Hoy es el aniversario de su muerte que, según dijo una vez, finalmente lo haría uno con la creación, con el musgo, con el amor. Comprendió que los misterios de nuestra existencia son demasiado vastos y hermosos para estar contenidos únicamente en una tradición, y exploró mucho más allá, iluminando a sus compañeros católicos y muchos otros sobre la sabiduría que se encuentra en el budismo, el sintoísmo, el hinduismo, el taoísmo y más. Brilló como ecoteólogo en particular y se destacó como un tipo de San Francisco que hablaba con las plantas, los animales y los árboles porque creía que todos le hablaban de verdades teológicas que nadie más podía siquiera sondear. Para decirlo en sus propias palabras, bébelo todo, todos los bosques de secuoyas, el mar, el cielo, las olas, los pájaros, los leones marinos. Es en todo esto donde encontrarás tus respuestas. Sin embargo, reconociendo que tanto el hermano Merton como yo tenemos una propensión hasta lo poético que añade misterio a misterio, intentaré ahora hablar más claramente sobre qué es la ecoteología y por qué es absolutamente crucial para nuestra existencia metafísica y física. En pocas palabras, cuando basamos nuestro pensamiento espiritual en la realidad de lo que nos sustenta, en la red interconectada de la existencia, en las aguas, los árboles, el aire que respiramos, eso es ecoteología. Cuando vemos el Atlántico cercano en las lágrimas de un amante, cuando la risa de nuestros amigos nos lleva a las alegrías de las montañas, cuando sonreímos a nuestra familia después de una deliciosa comida navideña y agradecemos a la tierra que nos la dio. Eso es ecoteología. Cuando clamamos al cielo y gritamos a nuestros políticos sobre la degradación de nuestro terreno, cuando nos unimos a nuestras familias indígenas para detener el robo corporativo de las aguas sagradas, cuando notamos que los veranos se están volviendo brutales y los inviernos cada vez más calurosos y decidimos ya es suficiente, eso también es ecoteología. Para citar nuevamente al hermano Merton y su hermosa poesía, al dejar de cuestionar el sol, me he vuelto luz, pájaro y viento, mis hojas cantan, soy tierra, soy tierra. Debemos entonces convertirnos en tierra también, como nos llama el hermano Merton. Tengo que disculparme porque prometí el fin de la poética, pero no puedo hablar de nuestra hermosa madre tierra, nuestra Ishel, nuestra Pachamama, sin sentirme impulsado a acercarme lo más posible a un lenguaje más allá de las palabras, lo que los sufis han llamado el lenguaje de los pájaros. Sin embargo, en esta lengua de místicos familiar para el hermano Merton, este himno oculto de los pájaros y los árboles que me trae aquí para llamarlos a la verdad teológica y la acción justa. No vengo a criticar a nadie, pero sería irresponsable de mi parte decir que no todos compartimos algún elemento de culpa para donde estamos hoy y por lo que hemos hecho en el único lugar que conocemos, lo que el místico humanista Carl Sagan llamó nuestro punto azul pálido, nuestro hogar. Más importante aún, todos compartimos una responsabilidad colectiva hacia una esperanza que los noticieros nunca parecen querer decirnos. Podemos hacer las cosas bien nuevamente. Podemos poner nuestra casa en orden. Es y será una lucha larga y ardua, pero poner nuestra ecoteología en acción resultará ser uno de los mayores logros en nuestra historia ética y espiritual, compartida como una especie joven y curiosa. Por eso he venido aquí, no para traer preocupación, miedo o incluso molestia, sino más bien para traer esperanza y amor. Debemos trabajar para responsabilizar a los poderosos que vierten productos químicos a nuestros océanos, que contaminan nuestras ciudades, que contaminan a nuestros cielos, que degradan al trabajo de los agricultores y sus tierras que nos aportan lo que comemos, que traen los terrores de la guerra a los olivares levantinos y campos de papayas centroamericanas, y que, lo más importante, quieren convencernos que no podemos hacer nada al respecto. Sin embargo, sabemos que eso es completamente falso, porque tenemos un espíritu activo y profético que nos une al universalismo unitario. Nuestra historia está llena de aquellos que no solo nos hablaron de estanques y árboles y del lado trascendental de la naturaleza, sino también de aquellos que arriesgaron sus propias vidas para decirle la verdad al poder, para liberar a los oprimidos, para llevarnos a una relación correcta con nosotros unos a otros y a nuestro maravilloso planeta. Somos herederos de este importante legado y por lo tanto debemos unir nuestras visiones espirituales y políticas en una ecoteología activa, poderosa y amorosa que transformará nuestros corazones, mentes, comunidades y el mundo. Recientemente un amigo israelí me envió los sorprendentes versos pertinentes a estos tiempos del poeta palestino Marwan Malkul, quien lo expresó tan bien y me conmovió a este sermón. Para poder escribir poesía que no sea política, debo escuchar a los pájaros. Y para poder escuchar a los pájaros, los aviones de guerra deben estar en silencio. Entonces, avanzamos juntos en este bello invierno, raro invierno, pero bello, como los ecoteólogos que somos, y asegurémonos de escuchar el viento en los árboles, para que toda nuestra familia aquí y allá afuera también puedan escuchar a los pájaros. Gracias, felices fiestas y que siempre seamos uno con la creación, con el músico y con el amor. My love be with you always.
Thank you so much, Pablo. We're going to end with the hymn number 163, which is For the Earth Forever Turning. So I invite you to rise in any way possible and join in singing this song for the earth. 163.
I invite everyone that can and would like to remain standing and hold each other's hand as we do here at Beacon. Enter into that beloved community with one another physically if you can. And for those of you at home, grab each other's hands if you'd like, or even your pet's hand as well. And I'd like to say, may we all always spend our time listening to the wind in the pine trees. May we hear the calls of the earth. May we hear each other's sorrows and joys and go into this winter together as beloved community. Thank you and have a lovely day.